I'm going to describe a single method to deal with fractions. It won't always be the quickest, but the advantage is you'll only have to remember a single method. And if you use the same method every time, there's much more chance you'll remember it weeks or months later. So here we go. Now always remember that one of the ways you can think of a fraction is an instruction to carry out a division. For example, 56 divided by 70 and 6 divided by 50. And if you had a calculator, this would be very easy. But we're going to pretend we don't have a calculator, so it's the non-calculator paper. And therefore we want the division to be as easy as possible. Now the first thing we're going to do is simplify the fraction. There are a few ways of doing this, but I'm going to write out the fraction in terms of its prime factors and see what cancels. And if you don't know how to find the prime factors using the prime factor tree, then see one of my other videos. So we've written it out in terms of its prime factors, the numerator and the denominator, and we can see what cancels. And so we're left with 4 over 5. Now by simplifying, the division is much easier to carry out. I wouldn't really want to do 56 divided by 70, but 4 divided by 5 is a lot easier. However, there's one more trick. Can I write this fraction as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10 or 100? This would make the division much easier, as dividing by 10 or 100 is simply a case of moving 1 or 2 place values. And again, you may need to revise equivalent fractions if you're not sure. But in this case, I certainly can write this fraction as an equivalent fraction over 10. And because I times the denominator by 2 to get to 10, I must also times the numerator by 2 to keep the fraction equivalent. So finally, having followed steps 1 and 2, we can now carry out the division to find the decimal equivalent. And 8 divided by 10 is pretty easy. We move it 1 place value, difficult to do in a notebook, and we usually turn a blind eye to you moving the decimal place by 1 position. And that will give us 0.8. So there we have it. The decimal equivalent of 56 over 70 is 0.8. Much easier by following these steps of first simplifying and then asking, can it be written as a fraction over 10 or 100? Now I've got my decimal. To change a decimal to a percentage, we multiply by 100. And again, this is easy as we simply move 2 place values. Although once again, I'm going to turn a blind eye to you moving the decimal point when we're working on pen and paper. So that would become 80%, since the decimal point would go there. Let's do another one. The first thing is we're going to try and simplify. Again, as I've said, there's many ways of doing this, but I'm going to write it out as a product of its prime factors. And I can see clearly what's going to cancel. Now I'm going to ask myself, can it be written as an equivalent fraction over 10 or 100? And yes, I can see it can be written as a fraction over 100. Step 3 will carry out the division. 12 divided by 100. And again, because we've been able to write it out as a fraction over 100, it's easy. We're going to move 2 place values. And there's our decimal equivalent. And then to find it, the percentage, we'll multiply by 100. That becomes 12.0, which we can write as 12%. Now, just to emphasize, there are shortcuts, and indeed some of you may have spotted some of the shortcuts. But my aim here is to give you one series of steps without any ifs and buts. You just follow the steps. And as you become confident, you will be able to explore the shortcuts that you can take. So here's one more. First of all, we look to see if we can simplify it, but in this case we can't. So can it be written as an equivalent fraction over 10 or 100? Well, unfortunately not. There's no whole number that we can multiply 8 by that will get us to 10 or 100. So we've arrived at the end of the road and we've got no choice but to carry out the division to find the decimal the hard way using the what you might know as the bus stop method. How many 8s go into 3? None. So I'll carry the 3. How many 8s go into 30? 3, with 6 remainder. How many 8s go into 60? 7, with a remainder of 4. And how many 8s go into 40? 5, with no remainder. So we found that our decimal equivalence is 0.375. And you can probably tell this is relied on you having a good knowledge of times tables. If you don't, you'll have no choice but to just write them out. Just take it steady. So the last step is we're going to multiply this by 100 to find the percentage. And again, we'll turn a blind eye to moving the decimal point 2 places. So that will give us 37.5%.